in which you write your own story.
A portion of this video is sponsored by Squarespace. The Wither, the second boss of Minecraft. A haunting, floating nightmare that's eluded all explanation since its introduction back in 2017. The Ancient Builders, a civilization lost to history, their works brought to ruin, and their name eroded by time. The Warden, the newest threat to this world, a creature of blind rage engulfed in shadow, an unstoppable force fueled by souls and empowered by darkness. Three groups, three distinct mysteries waiting to be solved, and all of them united by this. Hello, Internet! Welcome to Game Theory, the show that can't wait to hear you click that subscribe button. Is it safe? Are we okay? So, yeah, sorry about that. I kind of forgot the Warden was a thing. But can you blame me? The Warden was due to come out in the summer of 2021, but then the Deep Dark ended up getting removed from the update, which itself got split into two parts. Speaking of two parts, no, don't worry, this episode isn't a two-parter, but we do have ourselves a second Minecraft video happening today over on Food Theory. That's right, we got ourselves a Minecraft weekend, y'all. Well, here we're busy Is it safe? Are we okay? So, yeah, sorry about that. I kind dissecting the latest additions from the Wild update. Over on Food Theory, we're talking all about the Dream SMP, which honestly doesn't sound very foodie, but then Dream decided to go and kill Tommy in it using a potato. And you know where there is murder to be had, we'll probably find a way to make a theory out of it. So head on over there for all your potato murder needs after you're done with this video, because first, we gotta finish talking about the Warden. As of this week, it has finally launched as part of the Wild update. According to Mojang, not only have the mechanics of the Warden been refined, but they've added new blocks to the Deep Dark, new items, and oh yeah, we're also getting one of the coolest, most complex and interesting structures ever created in Minecraft, the Ancient Cities. Based on the name alone, this seems like the thing that we've been theorizing about for years. Oh, victory has never felt so good. But you know what feels even better than being right? Having new lore to chew on. Mojang understands that you don't just drop an entire underground city complete with giant burning portal frame into your game without considering what it's doing there from a story perspective. And similarly, you don't just introduce the single strongest mob to guard it without factoring in the rationale for placing it there. So our question is why? What does all of this mean for the secret story of Minecraft? How do these disparate parts wind up working together? Well, shockingly, not only is everything here connected, but all of it is also tied to one of the longest standing mysteries in the game, the Wither. But to decode it all, we actually need one key item. An item that's been broken up and hidden throughout all of these updates. Something innocuous, something unsuspecting, a simple music disc. Everything is unlocked through this one disc. So what is the story of the Deep Dark and how does it tie into the narrative that we've been building over the last 3 years? Strap in, friends, because today we're diving in deep to tap into the darkest lore of Minecraft. First, let's talk about the Skulk. When the Skulk family of blocks was originally announced in 2020, we understood the basics. A Skulk sensor reacts to noise, and when it does, it alerts a fearsome monster known as the Warden to your exact location. 2 hits later, you're dead, son. But now we have more details, and what we've learned is disturbing to say the least. A new block called the Skulk Catalyst basically takes in energy to transform the blocks around it into other Skulk blocks. That's how this creature is able to spread, but it begs the question, what energy is it using to convert these regular blocks? Well, this ain't your grandma's moss blocks that you can just bone meal around, my friends. These things take something a bit more potent than that. The souls of the living. You see, if a mob dies within 8 blocks of the catalyst, the mob won't drop XP orbs. orbs. Instead, souls appear above the catalyst, at which point the skulk spreads to new blocks. Remind me, where have we seen souls in relation to this update before? Oh yeah, the Warden. In the middle of its chest, we have what look to be the faces of 3 trapped souls. Now, in our last theory, we speculated that Wardens were created using a combination of skulk and souls in order to protect the underground cities. However, I'm not so sure anymore. Back in 2020, we got this tweet from 1.19 developer Brandon Pierce, which says, quote, "You could definitely argue that the skulk in general is sentient." Now, we just talked about how when a mob dies near the skulk catalyst, it creates new skulk blocks. But it can also create a new block called the skulk shrieker. This block is the key, because not only does it have souls swirling around inside of it, thereby confirming that it's being created from the souls of the dead, but it also makes these sounds. That's fine. I didn't need to sleep tonight. Minecraft is totally a kid's game. Anyway, that shriek isn't just signaling that I have to take an adult diaper change. When it goes off, you'll hear another noise, the sound of something burrowing up to the surface. That something is the off outside skulk shrieker. This block is the key, because not only does it have souls swirling around inside of it, thereby confirming that it's being created from the souls of the dead, but it also makes these sounds. That's fine. I didn't need to sleep tonight. Minecraft is totally a kid's game. Anyway, that shriek isn't just signaling that I have to take an adult diaper change. When it goes off, you'll hear another noise, the sound of something burrowing up to the surface. That something is the Warden. So what am I saying here? Well, I'm suggesting that the Warden wasn't created by the ancient builders to protect themselves. Instead, I think it was made by the skulk to protect itself. When it senses danger, it summons a creature made of skulk, an unstoppable force that acts as the final line of defense, trying to ensure the survival of this species. And this is actually supported by the Warden item drops. You see, if you manage to take one down, it drops a single skulk catalyst, which honestly feels like a crummy reward for something so difficult. However, from a lore standpoint, it makes perfect sense. If the Warden's primary objective is indeed the survival of the species, then in defeat, it would want to release a last-ditch attempt to keep the species alive, hence a single catalyst. But that still doesn't answer the major question: where did the skulk come from in the first place? For that, we actually have to take a closer look at the new biome, the Deep Dark, and more importantly, those ancient cities cities. Once you enter the Deep Dark biome, you start to find these patches of skulk blocks. If you follow these patches further down into the cave, eventually you'll find an ancient city, ruins covered in even more skulk. Logic would dictate that since the concentration of skulk is higher in the cities, this must be where it originated. And this seems to be correct. In the ancient cities, the hallways are covered in woolen carpets. That's an important detail since the skulk and wardens are south based entities. They respond to your steps. And wouldn't you know, wool and carpet are the only blocks that don't activate the skulk when they're walked on. This tells us that the inhabitants of the ancient city were clearly aware of the Warden, and they were trying to live their best alongside it. However, just because this seems to be where the Warden lives now doesn't mean that it's always been here. Right in the middle of the ancient cities is a massive structure made out of a new block called Reinforced Deep Slate, an immovable, indestructible block similar to the end portal frames. But that's not where the similarities end. In the game, files this big structure of reinforced deep slate is known as the city center. It's a pretty generic name, right? Doesn't really tell us all that much. However, there are smaller versions of that same city center dotted around, and in the game files, they're known as small portal statues. Portal, you say? Now sure, Mojang has said for years that it isn't adding any new dimensions, but that's missing the point. I don't think Mojang is introducing a new dimension, I think they're introducing the idea of a new dimension as they continue to explain Minecraft's history. A history that becomes a lot more clear thanks to one little item. Or should I say 9 little items that make up a bigger one. Disc number 5. That's right, ladies and gentlemen, we've got ourselves a new numbered disc. And you know what that means? Sound-based storytelling. But before I can start piecing together the disc and the lore, I've got to tell you about how you can start piecing together a great website, because this portion of today's episode is sponsored by Squarespace. Squarespace is the all-in-one platform for building your brand and growing your business online. Or in my case, your cat's business. That's right, I made a website dedicated to my cat Skip's beauty pics. Why? Because while I could have done something predictable, wanted to name it to the effectively template as I told it should. Built in implement. Also note to staff. So user domain, which can be found in chests. Now, back to our episode. As I alluded to, Disc 5 is actually split into 9 fragments which can be found in chests throughout the ancient city. But instead of delightful music, this one follows in the footsteps of Discs 11 and 13, a sound effect driven track that's designed to tell us a story in order to fill out the lore of what's going on here. The track starts off with the classic sound of static, like you'd expect from an old record player, but it begins to ramp up into a loud rumble, which is then immediately cut off, followed by what appears to be the speed up of time. We'll hear these sorts of speed ramp effects a lot throughout the disc. The next set of sounds are ones that are familiar to anyone who knows discs 11 and 13. The sound of someone walking underground, this time on dripstone. You can tell based on the footsteps, using their flint and steel to light a fire while bats flutter through the cave. However, as this character walks, it eventually turns into a march, which is then joined by other footsteps coming from what seems like heavily armored soldiers. We can make out sirens going off in the background. It all comes to an abrupt halt when something that sounds like a lever gets pulled. Now, I looked through a lot of Minecraft sounds. So far, it feels relatively self-explanatory. The first person we hear walking is someone leading a charge or a group of soldiers, lighting a torch to help them walk underground. In the distance, we hear the warning sirens of a city blaring. They open the door in order to defend the city against something when suddenly, the disc has a weird break. We hear 23 seconds of just music. It's almost like different discs have been smashed together. It was in fragments after all. That would also probably explain all the time warping effects we hear throughout the track. Different chunks of the disc were recorded at different RPMs, which is why the audio is constantly warping and shifting. Anyway, when the music ends, we're back to the story. Bubbling lava can be heard, while more footsteps on dripstone move towards an amethyst. They break the block, and doing so seems to set off some sort of a cave-in. It's not really a sound I recognize, and the closest I could find were mood sounds from the nether wastelands, which would explain the lava, but not really the dripstone floor of the amethyst. After the cave-in, we hear screeches off in the distance. Screeches of what appear to be phantoms. Doesn't make a whole lot of sense underground. However, very shortly afterwards, we hear our character run quickly, and the terrain changes from dripstone to stone to dirt. Meaning that he's running relatively close to the surface. We hear the clanging of tools as they collect materials, coughing as they light fires to see. But he clearly sees something that causes him to run away quickly, only to then reveal another monster roar, which is again quickly distorted by the change of scene from the disc. Thuds are now heard in the background, explosions distorted by the cave system. Our character places down sand, scrapes a metal tool against a stony object, and finally a mechanical noise is heard, all while eerie voices whisper in the background, similar to that of the Soul Sand valleys. But the explosions are getting more frequent, until eventually one bursts into the area. There's a brief moment of silence before suddenly the reverse sound of glass is heard, and we hear the souls shriek in a huge gust, leaving nothing but a warping hum in the background, all of which sounds very similar to the creation of a portal. In that moment, our character takes a few steps towards the portal. We know this because the sound gets louder, until he places down dirt blocks to help him reach it, where we are then met with the sound of a skulk sensor and the roar of a warden. tape actually winds down here, but there's actually one more sound mixed in with the warden roar. Listen carefully. Did you catch it? The warden roars, and it's closely followed by a slowed down death sound from one very specific mob, the Wither. So, that's the breakdown of the disc from what I can hear, but thinking about the story fragments that we have, the question is, what does it mean? Well, let's actually talk about that last bit. A member of an ancient builder society, the same one that made these underground cities, is out caving, collecting precious materials, when all of a sudden he hears something out in the distance. He rushes to the surface, only to see the Wither floating there. This leads to the first section of the disc with the emergency sirens blaring. The Wither is on its way, so the city needs to mobilize its army to try and take it down. They travel through the caves until they get to a secure entrance. When they open the gates, it's clear that their worst fears have come true. The Wither has followed the colonists down into the depths. They can hear the Wither's explosions in the distance, getting closer and more frequent. Desperate for an escape, they rush to finish the new portal technology they've been working on. They've clearly built portals before, specifically to the Nether, where they've learned about the properties of soul sand. We know this because of the lanterns that are all around the ancient city. They begin to make the final touches to their portal. They make it out of a block that is so impenetrable, not even the Wither can destroy it. This is gonna be their ticket out. They place soul sand underneath this new portal and they light it, which is exactly what we see left over in the ancient cities. There are also still remnants of their experiments underneath the portal. Redstone circuits experimenting with powering blocks, how much power you can output with different objects, redirecting power. Ultimately, soul sand seems to be the most powerful source of energy. Combining all of these things together allows them to open the portal. The souls from the soul sand screaming as they're used to power it. At that moment, the Wither breaks through. The builder makes his way to the portal to escape, but it's not what they expect. From the portal comes the Warden, who destroys the Wither, but also brings the Skulk into this world. And so that is the story of Disc 5, the origins of the Warden. It's not an experiment gone wrong, it's a desperate escape attempt to the wrong place, which brings with it a new and deadly invasive species, the Skulk. But the thing is, Disc 5 isn't the end of our story, because how did the ancient builders go from here all the way to the end? Well, it may be slightly more speculative, but hear me out. The Warden comes through the portal and kills the Wither. This wasn't the ancient builders' intent, but hey, worked out for them regardless. And so they worship the Warden as some kind of god. This is why there are candles all around the portal, along with the portal being shaped to look like the Warden. However, this blissful ignorance doesn't last forever. The ancient builders carry on with their lives, but doing so activates the new Skulk that's around, which eventually re-summons the Warden. The Warden then goes on to kill many ancient builders, spreading the Skulk further. Those that do manage to survive try what they can to remain in the city that they've built. They put down carpets and wool to make sure that they don't make sounds while walking around, but it's not enough. Even opening their chests sets the Skulk off, and so they're forced to leave the city. The few that remain decide, rather than building vast cities, to instead build one fortified fortress, the Stronghold, built with confusing hallways and winding staircases in order to give them the ability to outrun the Warden should the Skulk make its way to them. In these strongholds, they create the end portals and use them to escape from this unforgiving world, only to then get stuck on the other side. So there you have it, the origin of one of Minecraft's newest and most dangerous mobs. The Warden isn't a failed experiment, but rather an invasive species that came from another.
Not all milk is equal. With Parmalat, there's the perfect milk for everyone.
For me, it's Parmalat Everfresh with added vitamin D to develop strong bones.
Mine's Parmalat's Easy Chest. It's lactose-free, so leaves me feeling light.
And don't forget, Parmalat Growth 3 Plus to help them grow smart and strong.
Not all milk is equal. Not when there's Parmalat.
Parmalat.
Hey moms and dads, get ready for an adventure with Chowtown, a new and exciting Roblox game.
Iron. Glass. Redstone. Perfect. The Theor's Mobile is finally back to its former glory. Now all I need is some insurance and we're good to go. Ahem. Car insurance. Wait, what? I said car insurance, not phone.
Aha! But the Alea's just given you exactly what you needed.
Tom? Where?
Yeah!
Are you okay?
Never better. Full damage is pretty generous in this game.
But why were you in a...
Shh, never mind that now. Listen, your LA gave you a cell phone so that you could get an insurance quote with Geico, our sponsor for today's episode.
Oh, that makes sense.
They feeling protected.
What was...
Yeah, I'm not that.
Wait, what do you mean?
Oh, that's gonna hurt in the morning.
Theory all about it gives you more videos when you give it more subscribe buttons. Recently we did a theory all about some new inclusions to Minecraft during the Wild update. Specifically, we dug down into the deep dark to uncover the origins of the Warden, how the Warden actually has the spirits of 5 children stuffed inside it, and the underground ancient cities are actually old forgotten pizzerias. Sorry, that was a theory from the comments. We actually talked about how the Warden was summoned by the ancient builders to defeat the Wither, but once it did, it went on to take over, eventually causing the ancient builders to have to flee to the end. Here's a dramatic recreation of how it happened.
Thank you! Titan has freed us! I wouldn't say free, more like under new management.
But there was so much more to this Wild update than just the Warden that I didn't get the chance to talk about. We have the mangrove biomes that are full of intricate tree formations. We have frogs that eat slime and magma to produce light. Definitely a theory for another day. But the biggest part was the long-awaited introduction of the 2021 Mob Vote winner, the Allay. This mysterious-looking creature has one main function: to support the player in gathering resources. You give it an item, and it'll pick up more of that same item from the surrounding area. It's no wonder this thing beat out the Glare and the Copper Golem. I mean, a creature that tells you it's dark? I can't see and I'm being attacked by skeletons. Something tells me it might be a little dark in here. The Allay, meanwhile, this thing is perfect for adventurers, for music lovers, and for gathering the most difficult resource in all of Minecraft, the lore! That's right, this thing is deep fried in the stuff, simultaneously confirming theories we've had in the past about other mobs, while also opening brand new doors for us to explore about the world. And true to form, it's dark, it is disturbing, and it'll confirm for you that bit by bit, it's this channel's mission to expose this bright and friendly building game for the disturbing, twisted dystopia that it's always been. I mean, I'm not the one who's putting sound effects like this into the game. I'm just the one who's there telling you what it all means. So let me be your personal Allay today. Give me a few minutes of your time and I'll bring back more lore than you could shake a stone pickaxe at. This, my friends, is the tortured history of the Allay. Let's start things off with a hot take. The Allay look a lot like the Vex. Yep, I know, this is the searing insight that you come to this channel looking for. In all seriousness though, this is obviously something that people have been calling out since the Allay's announcement, but I do think it's worth starting there to see whether the connection is more than just skin deep, or I suppose soul deep. Remember, the Vex aren't made of skin. According to the Mob Bestiary, quote, "We do not know what a Vex's body is made from since it has not yet been possible to obtain a specimen, but it is quite possible that it is not flesh as we know it." We actually did a trio of theories back in 2020 that discussed the lore surrounding the Illagers, and in part 3 we took a closer look at the Vex specifically. Thanks to their lack of flesh, their ability to phase through walls, and the fact that they glow in the dark, we concluded that they aren't undead mobs like zombies or skeletons, but rather creatures made of souls. And that is souls plural. If you listen closely to their audio, you can hear multiple voices present. So, how does this compare to what we know about the Allay? Well, if you listen closely to their audio, you can hear multiple voices present. So, how does this compare to what we know about the Allay? Well, for starters, listen to one of the new sounds added to the game called Allay chortles. For those of you who don't know, to chortle means to laugh in a noisy or gleeful way. But even if you ignore the definition, you can totally hear it, right? The laughter of the Allay sounds very similar to one of the many voices heard within the shrieks of the Vex. Listen again and compare the two. And that's not all. The Allay share in the Vex's ability to glow in dark environments, which again would imply that it too is some sort of a spirit. But the biggest connection of all might just be the names. Vex is a word that means to anger or worry, while the word Allay means to relieve or alleviate. Clearly two opposite sides of the spectrum, kind of like an angel and devil on Minecraft Steve's shoulders, one hoping to bring him relief, the other worry. All of this tells us that these two are similar in many ways. They're both clearly spirits, but it doesn't quite tell us whether they're actually connected to each other. Are the Allay good versions of the Vex? Are they all just random spirits, or Or is there something else going on here? Well, again, let's go back to those Vex shrieks. In our previous videos, I talked extensively about how the evokers seem to be experimenting using life and death. There was a lot of evidence pointing to that, but the fact that they dropped totems of undying, literal tools for resurrecting the dead, is a pretty major clue pointing in that direction. And in that theory, I guess that the Vex was just another example of them using souls to create some new horrifying monster to do their bidding. Now, back at the time of the theory, we didn't know exactly where those souls were coming from, but now the answer is clear. The Allay are the ones being experimented on. They're being joined together and corrupted in order to create the Vex. Let's look for a minute at their spawn conditions. The Allay are only able to be found in pillager outposts in cages or in the woodland mansions locked up in jail cells. I mean, that's a weirdly specific place to find anything, let alone some weird flying spirit creature. And you want to guess how many Allay can be found in each cage or cell? 1 to 3. The same amount of voices that we can hear inside of the Vex audio files. The evokers are literally gathering these spirit creatures up and then putting them into groups ready for the experimentation. But is that all there is? I mean, don't get me wrong, it's cool that we've been able to use sounds and spawning mechanics to prove this connection beyond just they look the same, but is the Allay nothing more than a backstory for the Vex? Just doesn't seem right. The Allay, these flying spirit creatures, must exist for their own purposes beyond just the character everyone was already connecting them to. What are they specifically? Where do they come from? And perhaps the biggest question of all, why do they help us? I couldn't leave this many unanswered questions. I needed to look beyond the surface level stuff. I needed to dig deeper. Nope.
Hey Simmers, looking for a cool back tattoo? Get custom content on CurseForge.
Oh, too deep, too deep. What I mean is that we needed to go deeper into the history of the Allay. A history that actually goes back beyond the 2021 mob vote. I'm talking about the 2020 Nether update. It turns out the Allay was originally designed to be part of that update. It wasn't even going to be put up to a vote, like it was just going to be there. Now, if you're like me, when I first heard that, I wasn't all that surprised that it got removed. I mean, where does an angelic creature like the Allay fit into an update for Minecraft's version of HE double hockey sticks? Just feels a little counterintuitive, you know? But then I looked at the original designs and things started to make a lot more sense. Rather than being angelic creatures that looked like the Vex, the Allay started as small little cubes that left trails of blue flame behind them. Given that blue fire was a big part of the Nether update, things started to fit together much better. Plus, at this point in development, they weren't called the Allay, but rather wisps. In folklore, wisps, or more formally, will-o'-the-wisps, are depicted as ghostly lights or flames. So again, it would make sense for this to be part of the Nether update. Now, we don't exactly know why they were pulled from the game. Could have been as simple as they couldn't get the mechanics to work, but I have a feeling it might have to do with the lore implications. Wisp mythology varies a lot from region to region, but a recurring theme that I found in my research is that they're said to be the spirits of the dead. Now at first, that seems like it's an absolute slam dunk for the Nether. I mean, it is kind of the underworld after all. However, we also know that souls have a different form and purpose in the Nether. Soul sand and soul soil. Both of them play an important role for the Nether ecosystem. Without the souls of the dead being absorbed by the land, there would be no way for life in the Nether to exist the way that it currently does. So if you added a soul-based mob to the Nether, you'd have to explain why some souls become soul sand while others get to have a second life as a wisp. Basically, it screws things up, or at the very least overcomplicates things. But if you suddenly put these things out in the overworld, you don't have that problem. There's no naturally occurring soul sand, and so far, there's no explanation for what happens to the dead inside of this universe. Thus, the Allay can suddenly enter the game. Okay, so the Allay are the spirits of the dead, but then who died? Well, take a very close look at the Allay and tell me if you see something familiar. And this time, I'm not talking about the fact that they look like the Vex. Look at its head. Notice those subtle shading details? It has what appears to be a hairline. See those differently colored pixels at the top? Flat across the front, little arc around the sides of the head to reflect where ears would be. In fact, the pattern is very reminiscent of another character that we know all too well, Steve. Just look at the two of them side by side. It's an exact match. Now, I'm not suggesting that the Allay are the manifestations of the player character every time you die. Instead, I'm saying that the Allay are my favorite explanation for everything that we see in this game, the spirits of those who came before us. Say it with me now.
Ancient builders.
Looks like the Vex isn't the only thing with a lot of spirits trapped inside that are screaming to get out. Anyway, I'm not saying this ancient race all looked like Steve, but what I am saying is that Mojang gave the Allay some of Steve's key features as a visual shorthand for letting us know that these creatures are connected to us as the player in some way. Might sound like I'm reaching here, but hear me out. When you free the LA from their prisons, they'll act like most passive mobs. They'll just fly away without so much as a thank you. Now, mobs like wolves and cats will become friendly towards the player if you feed them enough, but the LA actually work differently. Instead of feeding them, the LA only ask for one small thing, an item, any item. Quote, we gave the LA and the player a magical connection, formed when you give the LA an item. That's actually a quote from Nir Ulraf Vaknin, a vanilla gameplay designer at Mojang. This isn't taming like the wolves and the cats, this is a special bond between the player and the LA. In fact, they actually have a different set of sounds for when they don't have an item labeled yearn. A yearn is an intense feeling of longing and desire. The LA need these items for some reason. They crave them. Well, what if they're the spirits of the ancient builders desperate to finish what they started, to finish their monuments, their cities, but they can't do it by themselves anymore. And when you do give them an item, things change. It suddenly pays attention to you. It helps you. It befriends you because it suddenly realizes who you are, a descendant, the new generation of builder that wants to continue exploring and creating, furthering their legacy. And to do that, you're gonna need items collected, something that the LA can help with. I mean, why you'd want to erect a giant recreation of my head into the side of a mountain is something that they don't quite understand, and frankly, neither do I, but hey, it's the spirit of creativity that they once had alive inside of you, and so they're more than happy to help out. The fact that the LA can interact with the Minecraft world at all should be a major hint as to their origins. They're able to pick up items, they give them to the player, and they can drop them at the closest note block. The only other mob that we know that can interact interact with the world is the Enderman, a mob that can also pick up blocks. Another mob that, wouldn't you know, we also theorized are ancient builders. Only these guys are still alive. They evolved over centuries of being trapped in the end. Even the LA's fondness for music makes sense. It dances when it's in range of a jukebox with a record playing, which may seem cute, but think back to the disc that we talked about in our last theory, disc number 5. That disc contains 23 seconds of music randomly inserted into the middle, part of a music disc that was owned by the ancient builders down in their ancient cities. Hearing music makes the LA want to dance, reminding them of the good old days when they were happy and alive, dancing and listening to the music inside of a world that they themselves built. A fun little Easter egg for casual fans, but a bittersweet moment for anyone who knows the truth about this game's story. So dance on, little guy. Dance on and remember those long lost days. And for you, I ask you to remember that it's all just a theory. A game theory. Thanks for watching.
This is you. Wait, no, this is you. And you want to conquer the world of Albion? Here's
Stand aside, Dream! If you thought Clay dropping the mask was the biggest thing happening in Minecraft news this week, think again! Cause today we've got an expose on Steve. Yeah, that Steve. Turns out Steve's the latest in a long line of heartless oppressors, conquering lands, sucking out their resources, and then leaving them to die. How do we know this? Well, have you heard about the newest game, Minecraft Legends? The whole thing is pure propaganda. Whole bunch of lies. So, let me ask again, who's Internet, welcome to Game Theory, the show that just keeps picking away at the hidden lore of Minecraft. Because let's face it, Minecraft isn't one of those games that explicitly tells you what's going on. Instead, it implies its lore through world design, spawn behavior, sound effects, and character appearances, all for investigators like us to uncover. A perfect example of this implicit lore came during Minecraft Live's reveal of the game's upcoming Caves and Cliffs update, when the team introduced us to the newest and most interesting mob to date, the Warden.
What did we just see?
They don't outright tell us what's going on with the Warden, but you only need to take one look at its chest and the souls that are trapped inside to tell that there's a story behind this guy. Ordinarily, I'd wait until the Warden was actually in the game so we could get the full picture of what its behavior and spawn conditions are like before we begin theorizing, but we've already got ourselves a ton of information to work with here. I mean, just look at this thing. The green texture of its skin is practically identical to the material used for end portal blocks. This mob is practically begging for a theory.
So you could say it's sort of an unsolved mystery.
You could. Excuse me, why is there a big neon green block creature in my video?
I'm Dream. I'm a Minecraft speedrunner, and I love talking about unsolved mysteries of Minecraft from time to time. I was actually just running away from some hunters, and I wound up in the wrong seed. And don't knock the green. I've seen your thumbnails.
You're a Minecraft speedrunner. Sure, early 2008 memes called, they want their stick boys back.
Says the guy who is literally a dancing cardboard cutout.
Touché. So, should we just end this awkward justification of why we're collaborating and just start talking about the Wardens?
That's probably a good idea. Let's end the cringe.
When you're here, the cringe never ends. I just simultaneously whipped and nay-nayed! Thanks, editors, like I said. So, even though the Caves and Cliffs update adding the Wardens to the game isn't expected to come out until summer of 2021, almost a year from now, we already know a lot about these guys. For starters, this new Warden mob was introduced alongside another new feature coming to the cave biome, the Skulk, a seemingly natural growth that appears in deep caves. As demonstrated in the gameplay reveal, the Skulk's most interesting feature is that it can sense sounds. According to what we've been been told, the skulk can detect footsteps, projectiles, and blocks being placed, and wool, which is presumably soft enough to insulate any vibrations, can prevent it from reacting.
This actually gives us a behavioral connection between the skulk and the warden. The warden is blind, meaning that it senses players by reacting to things like sound and vibration, just like the skulk does. Add that to the fact that the warden and skulk are found together in caves and share a very similar visual design, and it feels like the warden might be some sort of naturally occurring creature. Maybe something that grew out of the skulk? Or maybe the skulk evolved?
Possibly, but I wouldn't be so quick to jump to that conclusion. When asked about whether the warden and skulk are part of the same species, developer Brandon Pierce said this, quote, "They're made of the same stuff at the very least," eyeball emoji. That seems like a highly dodgy answer. Were they made that way by Mother Nature, or is he implying that the warden is perhaps a creature that was made through more artificial means? Perhaps by an ancient race of builders who had harvested skulk and found a way to use it in their contraptions.
That seems like a bit of a stretch.
I actually don't think I'm overanalyzing this. Viewers of this channel know that we've gathered a lot of evidence over the last year that there was once a great civilization of builders in this game. A civilization that built temples and mines long ago and then was forced to abandon them all for some unknown reason. So we have a good idea that they existed. And going back to the design detail that immediately caught my eye about the wardens, you look at the warden's chest and find that where you'd expect to see a beating heart, you instead see caged souls. Souls, plural. I don't know of many natural creatures that are born with multiple souls. It's highly suggestive of an origin that involves being created somehow, by creators who are perhaps harnessing souls as an energy source. And in case you think that I'm extrapolating too much from that little visual detail, it was once again confirmed by Minecraft gameplay developer Brandon Pierce, who, when asked about the warden's blue chest patch on Twitter, responded with, quote, "I can't confirm anything, but it definitely sounds like a heartbeat, and the texture is definitely reminiscent of souls." And in case you missed it when we talked about it earlier on this channel, this year's Minecraft dungeon game basically confirmed that certain items in the Minecraft franchise are built with literal souls that are being used as an energy source. Or, as the official Twitter account put it, quote, "A true adventurer puts their soul into everything they do, and the truest adventurers put other people's souls in it too." In that episode, we concluded that the Vex that evokers create are comprised of souls, and that opens the door to other sorts of artificially created mobs also built from souls, hence the warden.
So you're saying that the warden mob might be some sort of artificial construct made using soul sand?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, looking across all my past theories in this game, there's one common theme that keeps appearing: experiments with the creation of life. When you look at the design and story details of the various mobs throughout Minecraft, it all ties back to this recurring quest to become almost like God, with power over life and death. I've done major episodes looking into all this, but based on the evidence, the Illagers seem to have been booted out of the villager society because they were experimenting with creating life. The Iron Golem seemed to be an early stepping stone of some ancient race trying to create sentient creatures. The Wither itself seems like it was a failed experiment to create life using soul sand, and the list goes on for lots of other mobs. And so the warden being this combination of skulk and souls feels like it would be a natural extension to all of this. It was created, it was built, but built for what? That's the question.
Well, it's probably related to what you mentioned before. The wardens appear to be made of the same stuff as end portal blocks. I mean, I'd recognize that eerie shade of green anywhere. So if these wardens were artificially constructed, it might have happened at around the same time that the end portals themselves were being built. Plus, look at their name. Remember that end portals are found in strongholds, a place fortified so as to protect it against attack. Now, consider the name warden. These days, the most common use of the word warden is when talking about prison wardens, the supervisors who are placed in charge of keeping people in a secured structure. But the term warden actually has a much more general meaning too. A person charged with the care or supervision of persons, animals, or things. A keeper. Maybe they were built as guards to supervise or protect the end portals.
Huh, it's pretty good observation. Not bad for a guy who once tweeted that you ate your cat's poop.
Well, I can't really defend myself there, can I?
But you're totally right. The names Stronghold and Warden, as well as the color palette and the design, heck, even the fact that both Wardens and Strongholds are found in the deepest layers of the overworld, all of it implies some sort of relationship. You know, my exploration in the lore of Minecraft started with the Enderman, and what I found in that first episode is what convinced me that there is actual lore in this game. In that theory, I I concluded that the Endermen are actually an ancient race of builders who, eons ago, created end portals inside of strongholds in an attempt to flee the overworld, only to discover too late that it was a one-way trip. The Endermen we see today are the descendants of those ancient builders, who, through a combination of evolution and a chorus fruit diet, have become almost unrecognizable, except for their ability to pick up and carry blocks and a few choice vocal lines. When creating that stronghold, it would have made sense for those builders to create some kind of guard to hold down the fort. After all, what good is a stronghold if you have no one to protect it against invaders? Dream, that's your line.
Also, only a small percentage of people that watch my videos are actually subscribed. So if you end up liking this video, consider subscribing. It's free, and you can always change your mind. Enjoy the video.
Not exactly what I was going for, but seamless save, buddy.
Thanks.
Anyway, I think all of this paints a pretty compelling picture. After creating the overworld villages and the iron golems, the ancient builders continued their pursuits. They experimented with all sorts of things, including experimenting with constructs made using souls. This kind of experimentation is what would eventually unleash the horror that is the Wither, but it's also what gave rise to their automaton buddy, the Warden, built with the same material that they were using when they constructed the end portal blocks, which served as the vehicle for their final escape away from the underworld. Perhaps they left through those end portals expecting to return shortly after, leaving the Warden as a line of defense against anyone who might try to follow them, but they never returned, and the Wardens, believing that their masters had abandoned them, wandered away. They ventured deeper and deeper underground, finding a biome more suited to creatures that were created to exist in the dark, where they exist to this day, waiting for us to stumble across them. I mean, if that's actually what happened, it would explain a lot, like the Warden's name and why it seems to have multiple souls in its chest.
That's definitely a possibility, but I've been doing research, and it's also possible the skulk somehow creeped and crawled until it came into contact with soul sand and found a way to harness the energy of those souls to naturally spawn the Warden. Sure, I mean, the idea of a plant-like growth somehow doing this seems a bit far-fetched, and it wouldn't really match with the Warden name, but it's definitely possible. According to developer Brandon Pierce, you could definitely argue that the skulk in general is sentient. Happy face. It's weird that he says the skulk is sentient in general. Like, could all the skulk we see be part of some sort of hive mind with the Wardens in charge, or representing what happens when it hits some soul sand? Or what about a different possibility? Maybe the skulk attached itself to an iron golem. In the iron golem's base model, we see that they're covered with vine growth. What if vines weren't the only plant-like growth that decided to make an iron golem their home? Could the skulk corrupt or somehow take over an iron golem?
It's not a bad thought. As confirmed on Twitter, the skulk is bigger and more massive than the golem, and it's even more powerful but still possessing the same long arms. But again, it doesn't explain the souls or the name or the connection back to the end portal blocks, which is why my money's on it being an artificial creation by some ancient race. TLDR, I'm just really excited to dive into this update once it's finally out.
It definitely does seem like Mojang has been putting more time into the lore department these days.
So this isn't one of those days where we get to say that we solved the mystery of the Warden and the skulk. It's something that we'll have to do together as a community. And that's part of why I wanted to start having this conversation now, because not only is it something that we all have to look forward to, but it's also something that I think we should keep in mind as we continue to explore other parts of the Minecraft lore.
Ooh, okay, this is the part where you say the thing, right?
You made it to the end of the video, which means that you liked it and should therefore subscribe?
No, the other thing, but hey, that's just a theory.
Wow, that was worse than your answers in the Mr. Beast tournament.
I still technically finished ahead of you, Galaxy Brain.
Only because you were voted back in.
Technicality.
Well, from one loser to a fellow loser, thanks for coming on. And you know what? It is indeed time to say, but hey, that's just a theory. A game theory. Thanks for watching. And good luck with those hunters over there.
Dream. Come here, Dream. Wait, are we on game theory?